Maria thought Mrs. Williams was just another lonely patient with no visitors. She'd spend her lunch breaks reading to the 78-year-old woman, bringing her homemade soup, and listening to stories about her son, who worked in business. What Maria didn't know was that Mrs. Williams' son owned half of Manhattan, and he'd been watching everything through the hospital's security cameras. The assignment slip read simply, Room 314, Extended Care, Margaret Williams, 78. Maria Rodriguez folded the paper and tucked it into her scrub pocket. Another day at St. Mary's General Hospital, beginning like any other. She'd been working the geriatric ward for 3 years now and had learned that each room held a story, each patient a lifetime of memories waiting to be shared. Room 314 was different from the start. Margaret Williams sat propped against thin hospital pillows, her silver hair neatly combed despite the early hour. Her eyes, a striking blue that seemed to hold decades of secrets, followed Maria as she entered with the morning medication tray. "Good morning, Mrs. Williams," Maria said with her characteristic warm smile. "How are we feeling today?" "Better now that you're here, dear," Margaret replied, her voice carrying a refined accent that spoke of education and refinement. "The other nurses, they're perfectly competent, but you have kind eyes." Maria had heard variations of this before. Elderly patients often formed attachments to particular staff members, finding comfort in familiar faces during uncertain times. What she didn't notice was the small, nearly invisible camera in the corner of the room, or the way Margaret's eyes occasionally glanced toward it with the faintest hint of a smile. Over the following weeks, Maria found herself drawn to room 314 in ways that went beyond professional duty. Mrs. Williams never had visitors, never received flowers or cards, never had anyone call to check on her progress. The woman seemed to exist in a bubble of elegant solitude that tugged at Maria's heartstrings. "Tell me about your family, Mrs. Williams," Maria asked one afternoon while adjusting the woman's IV drip. She'd learned that engaging patients in conversation often did more good than any medication. Margaret's expression softened. "I have a son, David. He's very successful, works in business in New York." She paused, studying Maria's face. "He's very busy, you understand. Important meetings, travel, the kind of work that consumes a person's life." "I'm sure he's thinking of you," Maria offered gently, though privately she wondered what kind of son could leave his mother alone in a hospital for weeks without visiting. "Oh, he is," Margaret said with a knowing smile that Maria didn't quite understand. "He's always watching over me, even when I don't realize it." Maria began bringing small comforts from home, a soft throw blanket because the hospital ones were scratchy, homemade chicken soup in a thermos because the hospital food was bland and institutional, fresh flowers from her own garden because the sterile white room needed life and colour. "Maria, dear," Margaret said one evening as the younger woman arranged daisies in a plastic water cup. "Why do you do all this? I'm just another patient." Maria paused, considering the question. "My grandmother always said that kindness is free to give but priceless to receive. You remind me of her. She used to tell me stories about Cuba, about the life she left behind. I think everyone deserves to feel remembered." Margaret's eyes glistened. "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman." "She was. She raised me when my parents couldn't. Taught me that taking care of people isn't just a job, it's a calling." Maria tucked the blanket around Margaret's shoulders. "She always said the measure of a person isn't what they have, but what they give." What Maria didn't know was that 30 floors above the city, in a glass-walled office overlooking Central Park, David Williams was having his daily security briefing. The feed from room 314 played on a discreet monitor, showing his mother chatting animatedly with the young nurse who'd become her daily companion. David Williams, CEO of Williams International Holdings, was worth $4.7 billion, according to the latest Forbes estimate. His empire included real estate, technology, and pharmaceutical companies spanning 5 continents. He was featured on magazine covers, interviewed by financial news networks, and courted by politicians and celebrities alike. But he was also a son who hadn't visited his mother in 6 weeks. "Sir," his security chief, Robert Chen, gestured toward the monitor. "The nurse. She's been bringing your mother personal items, food, flowers, books. Should we be concerned about her motivations?" David studied the screen, watching as Maria patiently helped his mother with physical therapy exercises. "Run a complete background check, financial history, family, everything." The report arrived the next morning. Maria Rodriguez, 29 years old, single mother of a 7-year-old daughter named Sophia. Nursing degree from a community college, financed through student loans she was still paying off. Lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens, worked double shifts to cover rent and childcare. Her only luxury was a small garden on her fire escape, where she grew the flowers she'd been bringing to his mother. No criminal record, no outstanding debts beyond student loans and normal living expenses. No hidden agenda, no ulterior motives. Just a woman who worked hard, lived simply, and apparently possessed the kind of natural compassion that money couldn't buy. David found himself watching the monitor more frequently, seeing his mother laugh for the first time in months as Maria shared stories about her daughter's school adventures. The call came at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday night. Margaret Williams had suffered a mild heart episode and was being moved to the cardiac unit. David's driver had him at the hospital in record time, but when he arrived, he found Maria already there, still in her street clothes, holding his mother's hand. "I know I'm not supposed to be here after hours," Maria said, not looking up as David approached. "But she was scared, and she asked for me. I couldn't leave her alone." David studied this woman who'd cared for his mother better than he had. Up close, he could see the worry lines around her eyes, the gentle way she stroked his mother's forehead, the genuine affection in her touch. "Mom," he said softly. Margaret's eyes opened, focusing on her son's face. "David? Oh, my dear boy, I'm so glad you're here, but how did you know to come?" I've been keeping an eye on things." He glanced at Maria, who was quietly gathering her purse to leave. "Don't go. Please, she clearly wants you here." Maria hesitated. "I should let you have privacy with your mother." "Nonsense," Margaret said, her voice stronger now that both of them were present. "David, this is Maria, the angel I've been telling you about." David extended his hand. "Thank you for everything you've done for her. I've been watching." Maria's eyebrows rose. "Watching?" "The security cameras. I know about the soup, the flowers, the books you read to her, the blanket from your own home, the medications you helped pay for when her insurance was delayed." David's voice was thick with emotion he rarely allowed himself to show. "I know I should have been here. I should have been the one taking care of her." Over the next hour, as Margaret slept peacefully between them, David and Maria talked. He explained about the cameras, about his impossible schedule, about how building an empire had somehow cost him the relationship with the person who mattered most. "She talks about you constantly," Maria said. "How proud she is, how brilliant you are, how you're changing the world. But I think what she wants most is just to spend time with you." I kept telling myself I was providing for her, the best doctors, the best hospital, everything money could buy. But you gave her something I forgot how to give. "What's that?" "Presence, attention, love without an agenda." Maria was quiet for a moment. "It's not too late, you know. She lights up every time someone mentions you. You're her whole world, Mr. Williams." "David, and I can see it now. He looked at this remarkable woman who'd somehow bridged the gap between his wealth and his mother's needs. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why? Why did you do all this for a stranger? Maria smiled. She's not a stranger. She's someone's mother, someone's whole world. And she was alone. She paused. Besides, she tells the best stories about her son who works in business. I had no idea she was talking about David Williams of Williams International Holdings. David actually laughed. Works in business, that's very her. Margaret made a full recovery, but the experience transformed all three of their lives. David restructured his schedule to have dinner with his mother twice a week. He moved her to a luxury assisted living facility closer to his office, but made sure Maria could continue as her private nurse. I have a proposition for you, David said to Maria a month later, sitting in his mother's beautifully appointed new apartment. I'd like to offer you a position as Director of Patient Care for our new healthcare initiative. Maria nearly dropped the teacup she was holding. I'm sorry, what? We're launching a program to improve elderly care across our healthcare properties. Based on what you did for my mother, I can't think of anyone better qualified to lead it. The salary would be $150,000 to start, full benefits, and you'd have a budget of $2 million to implement your vision of what compassionate care should look like. David, Margaret interjected, you're overwhelming the poor girl. I don't know what to say, Maria stammered. I'm just a floor nurse. I don't have an MBA or experience running programs. You have something more valuable, David replied. You have the ability to see people as people, not problems or profit margins. You turned a sterile hospital room into a place of comfort and connection. You gave my mother back her joy. That's not something you can teach in business school. Maria accepted the position, but insisted on continuing her hands-on patient care 2 days a week. I never want to lose touch with why we're doing this, she told David. Her program revolutionized elderly care across Williams International Healthcare. Simple changes, encouraging staff to spend time talking with patients, allowing personal decorations in rooms, facilitating video calls with family members, led to dramatically improved patient satisfaction and recovery rates. The media noticed. The nurse who's changing healthcare read a headline in Fortune magazine. How one woman's compassion became a billion-dollar revolution, proclaimed Business Weekly. But for Maria, the real success was measured in smaller moments. Like the day Margaret walked her daughter Sophia around the facility's garden, teaching her about different flowers. Or the evening David joined them for dinner and shared stories about his childhood that made his mother laugh until tears ran down her cheeks. 6 months later, Maria stood before a conference of healthcare administrators, sharing her philosophy of compassionate care. In the audience, David watched with pride as this remarkable woman, who'd started by simply bringing his mother soup, now inspired thousands of caregivers across the country. Healthcare isn't just about treating symptoms, Maria told the audience. It's about treating human beings with dignity, respect, and love. Every patient is someone's mother, father, child, or friend. When we remember that connection, everything changes. After the presentation, a young nurse approached Maria. I work in a small hospital in Ohio. We don't have much funding, but I want to try some of your ideas. Do you think they'll work without all the fancy resources? Maria smiled, remembering her own small gestures in room 314. Some of the most powerful healing happens with nothing more than presence and kindness. You already have everything you need. A year after that first assignment to room 314, Maria found herself in David's penthouse office for the launch of the Williams Foundation for Compassionate Care, a $100 million initiative to support nursing education and elderly care programs worldwide. None of this would exist without you, David told her as they watched the sunset paint Manhattan in gold and amber. You didn't just take care of my mother, you reminded me what it means to be human. We all need reminding sometimes, Maria replied, even billionaires. They laughed, but David's expression grew serious. I spent so many years thinking that success meant accumulation, more money, more companies, more recognition. But watching you with my mother taught me that real success is connection, impact. Making someone else's life better not because you have to, but because you choose to. Margaret joined them on the terrace, moving slowly but steadily with her walker, Sophia skipping beside her, chattering about her school day. The 4 generations, Maria's daughter, Maria herself, Margaret and David, had become an unlikely family, bound not by blood, but by choice and love. You know, Margaret said, settling into a chair and pulling Sophia onto her lap. I always knew David was brilliant, but it took a special woman to teach him how to use his heart as much as his head. That evening, as Maria tucked Sophia into bed in their new apartment, David had insisted on relocating them to a building he owned, with no rent required. Her daughter asked the question that had been coming. Mommy, are we rich now? Maria considered the question. They had financial security for the first time in years. Sophia's college education was guaranteed through a trust David had established. Maria's work now touched thousands of lives across the country. But as she thought about Mrs. Williams's smile when she saw the flowers, David's tears when he finally told his mother he loved her, and the hundreds of elderly patients who now received care that honored their humanity, she realized they'd always been rich in the ways that mattered most. We're rich in love, baby girl, rich in purpose, rich in the knowledge that when we see someone who needs kindness, we don't walk by. We stop. We care. We make their world a little brighter. Like you did for Mrs. Williams. Like we all can do, every single day. Outside their window, the lights of Manhattan twinkled like earthbound stars. And somewhere in those lights, other nurses were working night shifts, other elderly patients were hoping for visitors, other families were learning the difference between wealth and richness. Maria had started by seeing a lonely woman in room 314. She'd ended by helping a billionaire remember how to love, transforming an industry, and proving that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest changes in the world. The assignment slip had been simple. Room 314, Margaret Williams, 78. The impact would last forever. If this story touched your heart, remember, every day offers opportunities for kindness that could change everything. You never know who's watching, who's learning, or whose life you might transform with a simple act of compassion.